By late January 1945, the German army was falling apart. Their last gamble in the Ardennes had failed, their defences were collapsing, and the Allies were pushing them out of France. But the Nazis held one last foothold, the Colmar Pocket. They were desperate to keep it, and that desperation would soon collide with an American soldier who had already become a legend. What he did on that day is almost impossible to believe. Audie Murphy was not supposed to be a hero, born poor in rural Texas, small, quiet, and fragile. He barely made it into the army. At just 5'4" and 112 pounds, he looked like a kid pretending to be a soldier. His fellow trainees called him baby, but what Murphy lacked in size, he made up for in speed, precision, and something far more important, absolute fearlessness. And soon, the Germans would learn just how dangerous that combination could be. From North Africa to Sicily to Italy, Murphy proved himself again and again. He destroyed machine gun nests, stopped tank assaults, and led attacks other men were too afraid to try. He earned medal after medal, including the Distinguished Service Cross and 2 Silver Stars in just 3 days. But each victory came with wounds, infections, and exhaustion. He refused to leave the front. He even had to be dragged to an aid station, and when no one expected it, he returned to battle still, only 19 years old. The stage was set for his most extraordinary moment. On January 26, 1945, Murphy and just 40 men from Company B were holding a frozen tree line near the village of Holtzwert. Their strength was shattered from days of fighting. The ground was so frozen they couldn't dig foxholes, and their support was nearly a mile behind them. Murphy looked across the open fields toward the village and sensed something bad was coming. He ordered a second fallback line, just in case. He had no idea how right he was. At 2 p.m., the sound of engines shook the air. Out of the mist appeared 6 German Jagdpanther tank destroyers, some of the deadliest machines of the war, followed by 250 infantrymen dressed in white, moving in a wide formation across the snow. The sight was overwhelming. Murphy immediately called for artillery and shouted for his men to fall back. What came next would define his place in history. The crew abandoned it under heavy fire. The second M10 tried to back up, but slid into a ditch, unable to fire. Company B was suddenly alone, exposed, and facing an armoured assault with almost no support. Murphy stayed behind, standing in full view, directing artillery fire by telephone while enemy tanks closed in from both sides. Shells exploded around him, branches shattered above him, bullets ripped through the air. But he didn't move, and this is where the impossible began. With his men retreating, Murphy climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, the same one that could explode at any moment, and manned its 50 caliber machine gun. Standing on a vehicle loaded with ammunition in the middle of an open field, he opened fire on the advancing Germans. He was alone, completely exposed. And yet he held his ground against 250 soldiers. What he did next left even hardened veterans speechless. For nearly an hour, Murphy fired nonstop, cutting down German squads, stopping flanking attempts, and calling artillery strikes so close that shrapnel from his own side clanged off the burning tank. When a radio operator asked how close the enemy was, Murphy answered, "Just hold the phone, and I'll let you talk to one of them." At one point, 12 German soldiers got within 10 yards of him, preparing to overrun his position. He saw them through the smoke and killed all 12. His leg was bleeding, the tank beneath him was ready to explode, and German fire was hitting every inch of the field. But Murphy kept fighting. He alone stopped the enemy advance. And finally, after more than an hour of impossible resistance, the German attack began to break. One man 19 years old had held off an entire assault. Only when his last bullet was fired did Murphy climb down, limping, exhausted, covered in blood and smoke. He returned to his men, reorganized the company, and led a counterattack that pushed the Germans back into the woods they had come from. Then, and only then, did he accept first aid. For his actions that day, Audie Murphy received the Medal of Honor and cemented his legacy as the most decorated American soldier of World War II. But the story does not end with victory. Murphy returned home a national hero, but like many veterans, he carried the invisible wounds of war for the rest of his life. His courage on that battlefield is still remembered as one of the greatest one-man stands in the history of warfare. If you love powerful war stories, legendary heroes, and real moments that shaped history, make sure to follow this channel for more incredible stories.